and welcome to tonight's Words of Hope. This series of short but important video messages have been put together by the Elim Church in Ireland with the purpose of speaking life into our current situation of lockdown. The series has been airing every Sunday night at 7:30 for the month of May. If you've missed any, you can go back and catch up on our Facebook page.
My name's Peter and this is my wife Gemma, and we go to Ballymena Elim Church. And can I just encourage you, if you're watching this, to share it on your Facebook page, or if you're an administrator of your church page, to please share it and use it as a tool to reach your family and friends with these words of hope.
We're really pleased to introduce tonight's speaker, who is Pastor Darren McClatchey.
Darren and his wife Lauren recently planted a church in Dublin, which is called Capital City Dublin, and tonight he's going to be sharing a word about freedom.
Stick around after the video as we will be hosting a Q&A with Darren and some other panel members.
We recently just moved house to Dublin, and actually where we've got our house there is a beach nearby, and so we take the dog down to the beach. Previously, anytime I ever took the dog out, I took him out on the lead, but we got one of those leads, you know, that like extends way out and then gets to a point and like pulls him, and then he just would come back in and he could run about a little bit. And whenever we moved here, I decided I was gonna try and like take him off the lead, but my problem is that he's like a bit daft and would just like run off and wouldn't think to come back, and so I was really nervous about this. So we found this like secluded little beach, and I thought, I'm gonna let the dog off and we'll see what happens. And so here I am, treats in pocket, ready to go, let the dog off, and he starts to run. And I was like, this is great, look, he's so good. But what I did notice was that he would run so far and then almost like slow down a little bit and then run again. And so he'd run so far, slow down a little bit, and then just start running again. And I was kind of watching for a while trying to work it out, and what I realised was that he would run to the point of his lead, where his lead would normally stop him, and then realise that the lead wasn't there, and then would run on. And I guess it got me thinking around all of the years that I walked the dog on the lead, not off the lead. He could run about and almost had like an illusion of freedom, but wasn't really actually free. And one of the things that this season of lockdown has really brought to the forefront of us all is this idea of our freedoms, like what makes us free. We've seen lots of comments on social media, we've seen it on lots of different platforms, heard people talking about it on the news, about how our freedoms have been restricted, how our freedoms might have been taken away, how our freedoms have been pulled back. But then I just got thinking, are those actually the things that make me free? Like if I can go to the shop when I want and visit who I want and go where I want and drive where I want and exercise where I want and go on holidays when I want with whoever I want, am I free? Like, what is the source of our freedom? What are the things that make us feel free? And then what are the things that actually make us free? I would argue that lots of the things that we claim are our freedoms, or even at times people talk about their rights, are actually just an illusion. It's almost like my dog on the lead. He feels free to a point, but when we get to the end of that, then all of a sudden I just don't feel free anymore. It's like I've had this run of something and it's felt great, but all of a sudden I'm at the end of it and now I feel like I'm stuck again. I'm back to questioning things, I'm back to trying to understand, and I might come back a bit and try to run another direction to try and find true freedom, but then I just get stuck again and I have to come back. I mean, surely the word freedom would suggest to us all that we were actually once bound to something, actually once caught in something, and would now be free from that. Romans 6 would teach us that humanity, that us, that you, that me, that we're actually slaves to sin, that we were born bound to sin, that we were created in sin. It's all we know, it's all we've known, and so it feels normal because it's what we've always known, but actually we're bound and we need to find freedom. And it's inclusive of us all, because Romans 3:23 would tell us that all has sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And all is a pretty inclusive word. It includes you and it includes me, so none of us get away from it. None of us are born free. All of us are born trapped. And if we're born trapped, then we need to find the source of our freedom. And the problem that we have with our sin is that there's no way in ourselves that we can beat it. There's no way in ourselves that we can get past it. There's nothing in me that would be strong enough or good enough to overcome it on my own. Left on my own, I would be born a slave to sin and I would die a slave to sin. But I'm so grateful for the truth that freedom is an option for us, that we don't have to die a slave to sin. We can die to sin, to be free from sin, but freedom is an option for you and freedom is an option for me. The Bible teaches us that when we couldn't beat sin on our own, that God would send his Son, Jesus Christ, who would pay the price for our sins. He would break those chains that held us to it, and he would set us free. Jesus would come to offer us true freedom. Freedom that we couldn't work for, freedom that we couldn't get on our own, freedom that we couldn't earn on our own. Jesus would offer freedom to us. And so what does freedom really look like? I would argue with you that it's not going to the shop when you want, or hugging who you want, or walking beside someone at a distance less than 2 meters. That's not what it means. I would argue that freedom isn't visiting your family or your friends, or traveling where you want, or walking around where you want. But what if it looked more like freedom from guilt, and freedom from shame, and freedom from anxiety, and freedom from fear, and freedom from addiction, and freedom from selfishness, and freedom from our past mistakes, and freedom from all of those things, the turmoil inside of us? What if freedom really looked like that? And that's what Jesus comes to do for us, to set us free. And it's not a freedom to a point, because the Bible teaches us in John 8:36 that if the Son sets you free, then you are truly free. That means it doesn't really matter what goes on around me. It doesn't matter what restrictions a government puts in place. It doesn't matter where I end up in this world. It doesn't matter what other people might say or do to me. That doesn't impact my freedom. That doesn't lessen my freedom, because the Son sets me free. And who the Son sets free is free. He's free indeed. The Son sets me free. Jesus Christ sets me free. And so it doesn't matter what goes on around me, because I am free. My freedom isn't measured by the outside and the external. My freedom is measured by the internal and what goes on inside of me. What the Son, what Jesus Christ has done for me. What I really love is that Jesus doesn't just free us from things, but Jesus frees us to things. It's not just like, oh, you're free from all the bad stuff in your past, but actually for your future, you're free as well. He frees us from, yes, but he also frees us to. He sets us free. And now we stand in this wide open space of God's grace and God's glory. And in that space we find life, we find love, we find contentment, we find peace, we find friendship, we find purpose, we find joy, we find provision in these wide open spaces with God, because God didn't just set us free from all of the stuff in our past. He set us free to something. And so what if the freedom that you've had, or the freedom that you felt like you've had, has just been an illusion? What if you're only free circumstantially? What if you've lived your life basing your freedom and your level of freedom on what's going on around you, but really on the inside you're still a slave? And so my question to you is, what about you as a human being? Are you free? Because Jesus is the source of our freedom, and that freedom is offered to you today. And so you have a choice. You can continue to live your life in the illusion of freedom if that's what you want. You can decide to just keep going how you're going. You're happy enough on the lead, just going as far as you need to, and then trying something else. And you can waste your life like that if you want. It is just an illusion of freedom, and it is actually slavery. But today you have the option to step towards Jesus. We accept the gift of life that he gives us. We accept all that he has done for us. We recognize that on our own we could not beat it. We recognize today that Jesus takes on all of our guilt and all of our shame and all of our sin, and he pays the price. He lays down his life that he might offer us freedom instead of slavery. Jesus is the source of our freedom, and he offers it to you today. The question is, will you take it or won't you?
Thanks to Darren for that message. And if you're interested in becoming a Christian, follow the links to Elim Ireland's website, which is on the screen now.
If you've any other questions, you can email info@elimchurchireland.com. Next Sunday night's Words of Hope will be brought to us by Charlotte Curran, and we really hope you'll join us for our final week, next Sunday at 7:30.